Alright, hey guys, what's up? Welcome back to my channel. For those of you who are new here, my name is Steph, and today I'm going to be sharing with you guys my 2023 year in books. I am filming this on the 21st, so there may be a few more books that I'm gonna miss. But I'm filming this on the 21st because on the 23rd I'm going to Boston, and I don't know how much filming ability I'm going to have in Boston. Mostly because my lovely boyfriend and I are pretty much going to be living in very close quarters, and he has to work, and I don't want to like film and distract him. So I'm just gonna get everything kind of done early. So anyways, this was a big year in books for me. I've read 91 books so far this year, and I have a few more in progress that I'm definitely going to finish before the end of the year. So there's a lot going on. There's so much that okay, here we go. I've scrolled all the way back to January for what I've read. All right, here we go. This is gonna be a very snappy, like, if I don't remember something, I'm honestly gonna tell you guys, I don't really remember it. But here we go. So I read Gods and Monsters, which is Serpent and Dove 3. This was the very first book I read. This is a continuation. I read the first two books in 2022. Now, I kind of flailed through this book, for lack of a better word. I faffed around. I didn't really get into it for a really long time, so I could have finished this in 2022, but anyways, I love Lou. She's the main character in this. I really like her. I love how much strength she shows and how far she comes, and even though she is faced with something really, like, I'm gonna try not to spoil it as much as possible. Throughout the whole thing, we realize, I think around the second book, what she's actually been through, and it's horrific. And despite that, she just powers kind of through, and I love that. I love that for her. Okay, the next book that I read was On the Way to the Wedding, which is the 8th Bridgerton book. I don't really remember this, but these books, like the Bridgerton books, are great. They're really good. Then I read the On the Way to the Wedding, the epilogue. She does these epilogues. It was cute. It was good. I just don't remember specifically Gregory. I mean, I ultimately, I'm still a Daphne, and whatever his name is, the Duke. Like that, like the first book, which is Daphne, is my favorite story. I think I also really like Anthony's story. So I also like Colin's story and Benedict's story. Effectively, like the first four I really liked. Eloise's was also really cute. So was Hyacinth's. Like, they're all cute, but definitely, like, because I guess Daphne's is the OG, and I watched, like, the first season of Bridgerton follows the first book, and there's so much, I don't know, in that I still think that the first book is the best book in my opinion. It's the one I like the best. Then I read Because of Miss Bridgerton, which is Rokesby's #1. This was really good. This is about the parental generation of the Bridgertons. So Edward Bridgerton, which is the father of all of these kids who we know, it's about his sister Billy and the people who live next door to them, the Rokesbys, and about how Billy falls in love with the Rokesby, whatever his name is, George. Great. Loved it. 10 out of 10. I have not read the others in this series yet, but I probably will at some point. A Million Worlds with You, which is Firebird #3. This is another book that I just like lingered on reading. I don't know why. It was really good. It was a really interesting thing. Effectively, there are like different worlds that can only be accessed a specific way, and there's like murder, there's love, there's doppelgangers, everything. If you really like multiple worlds, where like if you like things where like it's like your like people's souls will like find each other across worlds and universes and whatever, like this series is good for that. Then I read Queen of Myth and Monsters, which is Adrian and Isolde #2, and this gets recommended on Book Talk a lot, but genuinely I can't remember this plot to save me. So yeah, Then I flew through the Zodiac Academy series. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, pretty much back to back to back. I binged them all in a week. These are what I think really kicked off my reading, like, binge this year. Yeah, these books are really good. So they are about two twins who grow up in the mortal world but are actually magical. They're fae, they're type of fae, but there's a lot of zodiac, like Western zodiac lore in it, and I think it's really cool. There's shape-shifting and all this. There's love stories, there's heartbreak, there is, like, you know, all of that good stuff. Finding out who you are, everything. There is a hot prof. There's a little bit of like an Ezra Arya situation. There is an enemy to lovers trope in it. There is like gay, like love interest at a point. It's great. These books are really spicy, but I would honestly recommend them. I think that they were pretty great. So that was in March. Then I read Buffy the Vampire Slayer, Own It, which is just like the continuation of, this is season 10, episode 6. It's the season finale, and then it was like season 11 is after, right? So read that. I really like Buffy. I have been reading through the kind of like after comics by Joss Whedon. I know that there's a lot of controversy surrounding him. Don't think he's a great dude, but I think Buffy as a very strong female character is a great read. It is a graphic novel, which I don't love. I don't love graphic novels. Then I finished Lord of Chaos, which is The Wheel of Time. And there is a big gap here. I definitely got a book hangover from binging through the Zodiac Academy series, the first part of the series. So that was in March, and then in May I finished Lord of Chaos, which is Wheel of Time 6. I really like this series, but you really have to like either pay attention or make sure you're kind of refreshing yourself on what's going on if you're a little space cadet like me. But overall, these are really good. I really like these. I think a lot of people have a lot of difficulty with his prose and how he describes things. He is very descriptive, but I like to listen to the audiobook, and it's perfect because it is just slow enough that if you're doing something else and find yourself a little distracted, you don't tend to miss too much all the time. So that's great. And these are a very formulaic fantasy book. It's like there is a build, there is the climax, there's the descent, and then there's like a final battle, and it's great. It's good. Very comforting kind of thing. Then I finished the Zodiac Academy series, what's published so far. So 7, a prequel series, and then 8. Yeah, truly just can't say enough good things about this series. If you are into kind of that like romantic-y, spicy kind of thing. Then I read The Summer I Turned Pretty, again for the second time. So I read 1, 2, and 3 pretty much in a weekend. These books are okay. I think, and I think everybody agrees with me, that Belly is just so frustrating. Conrad should seek some therapy for his emotional unavailability, and Jeremiah is kind of trash. So yeah, anyways. Then I read My Fault, which is Culpable One. I believe it's actually called Mea Culpa. But it's by Mercedes Ron. It's a book that's originally in Spanish that was translated to English after it gained popularity. There is a movie on Prime that is kind of based off of it, but the first book is actually a girl named Noah from Toronto who moves to LA and then falls in love with her stepbro. So if you're not into that, don't read it. This book is spicy and it has intrigue, and it's like all of a sudden, like there's like, it's illegal street races and everything. It's kind of a little bit of like the Fast and the Furious, but if they were step siblings and really wealthy. But pretty good, but like obviously a little bit of a more smutty book. I don't know if I would necessarily recommend it. I think if you're if you liked the movie, or if you're just like interested in that sort of like very smut sort of fanfic kind of esque book, yeah, but it was okay. The second book, I have the second book now, and I'm kind of reading it, but I'm like, I'm not as into it. So yeah. Then I read the Gossip Girl manga just to try and get out of a reading slump, guys. It was okay. Then I read the whole Secret Circle series. What I didn't know about this series is that the first 3 books are written by the original author, L.J. Smith, and then the next 3 books are written by Aubrey Clark, who is a separate person. So there's effectively 2 trilogies in this series, and Aubrey Clark did not do a good job on the plot continuity, my guy. Like, L.J. Smith is the creator of this series, and effectively what ended up happening is L.J. Smith was contracted by the publishing house to create the series. It's not like L.J. Smith created the series and then to the publishing house or something. So L.J. Smith didn't own the IP, and when they didn't want to write something or didn't want to do something, it got given to somebody else. And there's a very clear like shift in tone. I guess, yeah, you can read more about it, but I guess there was a falling out or something. I also read The Comeback by Lily Chu. This was cute. I really liked this. It is a girl from Toronto who ultimately ends up falling for her roommate's cousin, but he is a secret and it changes her life completely, but she ends up falling in love with him, and just like, I don't know, it was cute. I really liked it. Then I reread the like Hades by Persephone saga by Scarlett St. Clair, so a touch of in both perspectives, the Hades and Persephone. So I read A Touch of Darkness, A Game of Fate, and A Touch of Ruin. And then, yeah, so then I got a book hangover from that. So then I read Twisted Loyalties, which is the first book in the Kimura Chronicles, which is a continuation of like the Twisted Bonds sort of thing. Good, quite good, if you like mafia smutty books. Then I read A Game of Retribution, and then I read The Awakening is Told by the Boys, which is like Zodiac Academy. So just kind of continuing, and then for a little bit I bounced back and forth between the Kimura Chronicles and the Scarlett St. Clair like Hades Persephone situation. And then I ended up reading 2, just flipped back and forth. And then I read the next 2 books in the Buffy the Vampire Slayer like season 11 series. Pretty good. And then I read Beautiful Disaster, and this book was truly, so there's a movie on Prime about this, which is how I ended up reading the book, and this was on Book Talk for a while, like this movie. The movie is okay, it's better, but the movie is better than the book. The book is disturbing. There is so much toxicity, there is so much just like unnecessary almost violence. It's just like, ugh. This book is just not the vibe, my personal opinion. It got a 4.02 rating on Goodreads. I gave it a 1 because I think at the end of this book, a bunch of people died, kind of randomly. And I think that it was really stupid for the author to write this. Personally, I just wouldn't have written it. I just would have left it be. There was no need for it. It didn't contribute to the plot or anything. So she just killed off a bunch of people for no reason. And the way they died was being trapped in a basement and burned alive, which I personally feel like is very horrific and very disturbing. And I just don't think it was necessary. And I think the movie is better because it doesn't include a bunch of this shit. But yeah, it's like very much like good girl falls for bad boy. Bad boy is like really bad and like all this stuff. It's great, but I mean, like I said, in the movie, they really toned down the aggression and the violence and the anger issues and all this sort of stuff. And in the book, he has some really bad anger issues to the point where it borderlines like abuse. And I think if people have dealt with situations like that, this book is not for you. Do not read it. If you're very sensitive to that, like this book just like was uncomfortable for me to read. And I feel like with that sort of stuff, I have a pretty good ability to like suspend my disbelief, but no, not for me. I would not recommend it. No. Then I just finished up the Gossip Girl manga thing, whatever. Then I read A Touch of Malice, which is the Hades by Persephone book 3. Like I said, I just kind of flipped around with this. And now we're into I Am in Greece here. So then I read the Crowns of Nyaxia series. This is like, yeah, so the adopted human daughter of a vampire king goes into this tournament and has to compete against a bunch of vampires, and she ends up, of course, falling in love and all of this sort of stuff. It's great. These books are really good. If you like SJ Maas, yeah, these will be good for you. So I read 1, 2, and the prequel novella. Really good. Then I flipped back to the Kimura Chronicles and I read 4 and 5, which I believe are it. I just like pushed through the series. No, and then, sorry, 4 and 5, and there's one more book. Then I read House of Beating Wings, The Kingdom of Crows. Really good. Really good. Another sort of romantic-y sort of book, but effectively it's kind of like, so it's kind of like the Illyrians in ACOTAR vibe, where you have this like race of people who nobody knows anything about and like all of this sort of stuff. Outsider falls in love with their king, but doesn't know all of this sort of stuff, and then they go on and it's like them against the world, and everybody thinks they're the bad guys, but they're actually the good guys. Very good. Would recommend. I'm doing a terrible job of describing it, but very good. Would recommend. Then I read A Game of Gods, which is the Hades Saga number 3. Also really good. I was also reading this in Greece because I wanted to get myself prepped and ready for Greece, so I read books that involved their gods. Because yeah, the whole like Hades and Persephone saga is set in a world in Greece, but where the gods have come down from that, like Mount Olympus, from the heavens, and live amongst the humans in Greece. So in Athens and Olympia and all of that sort of stuff. And they take part in society and everything. So very good. I really like it. They are very smutty, very spiced. So yeah, just age warning on that one. Then I read A Discovery of Witches, which is the All Souls trilogy number 1. You guys know I rave about these books. I really love them. So well written. And unlike a lot of fantasy books, romantasy books, the actual, like the protagonist isn't 12, for lack of a better word. She's like 30 something. So I love that. These books are just so well written. Diana as a character is very beautifully written. She's very deep, she's very complex, but she's very human. She deals with very human struggles, and even though she's a witch, what she deals with is obviously very easy to extrapolate into like feeling a lack of belonging, not knowing who you are, hiding from who you are, not knowing how to embrace your full potential, all of that sort of stuff. Super great, would recommend, love these. Then I read Red, White, and Royal Blue after reading, or after watching the movie. Very good, very cute, very like movie, book. They did a good job making sure it was kind of lined up. Then I read the second book in the All Souls trilogy, which is called Shadow of Night. Again, this is in the same Discovery of Witches universe. This is my least favorite book in the series because they spend so much time in medieval, like in the medieval times effectively, in Elizabethan England. That's just my own personal thing. I love their interactions in the real world, but so I've watched the TV series with this as well, but I loved in this the detail, and I think it was really cool, and it is good. It's just my least favorite book, but it's still amazing. Then I read Back in a Spell, The Witches of Thistle Grove, number 3. I read, well, they kind of come out around Halloween, like these are all like Halloween kind of era books. Oh, I also read Fourth Wing while I was in Greece. I forgot that, but I read it twice, kind of back to back. So Fourth Wing, chef's kiss, amazing. I've talked about Fourth Wing so much, but it's so good. So yeah, Back in a Spell, Witches of Thistle Grove number 3, read that. That was good. If you guys like witchy, kind of Halloween-y sort of romances, this series is great for that. Then I finished the Kimura Chronicles series, so that was number 6. Wow. Yeah, these books are good. I really like how, now these books are like, they're mafia, so they have a lot of violence in them, but not a lot of violence towards women necessarily, if I remember this correctly. But the thing about this is that the men in these books, in Cora Riley's universe, these mafia men are very protective of the people they love and will hurt like abusers and rapists and everything. Like, they're bad men, but they're like bad men who do good things for the people they love. You do have to suspend your disbelief on that, but if you are okay with that sort of thing, these are great. It's kind of like it's like Rhysand and Xaden IRL in like the Mafia universe, sort of same vibes. Then I read In Charm's Way, which is the Witches of Thistle Grove 4, and the Hex, and My Roommate is a Vampire. These were all like Halloween-y sort of reads. Then I read The Iron King, which is Iron Fae number 1. I flew through this book. I really liked the first book, but as you guys will know, because this is kind of like where I started my weekly recap, I can't stand Megan Chase anymore. I can't. There is one more book in this main, well, it's a quartet and then another quartet, I think, is how she like built the series, but they're like related. And I cannot read the fourth. I'm like dragging my feet on the 4th book because I just can't stand Megan Chase. Can't do it. She bothers me too much. But yeah, first book, really liked. Other books, didn't like. The Path of Daggers, which is Wheel of Time 8. Again, these books are kind of starting to like, oh yeah, so this one, we have the Sean Chen coming back. Pretty good. Pretty good, I will say. But yeah, like the Wheel of Time, it's so long and the books are so big that like I am so lost as to where I am in the story that I can probably only tell you where I am in the story if I were to like read like my book, and then I would be like, oh, I'm here in the story. I don't remember it explicitly. I'm so sorry. Then I read The Iron Daughter, which is the Iron Fae 2, which is where my dislike of Megan Chase started. Don't recommend this series. It really bothers me personally. Then I read The Iron Flame, which is the Empyrean number 2. Now, is obsessed with Fourth Wing, which is the first book in the series. I loved it. I honestly don't know if a better fantasy book has been written recently, like romantasy book has been written recently, because it is perfection. The Empyrean Iron Flame, it's good, don't get me wrong, but I think I had a lot more ups and downs and like conflicting emotions with Iron Flame than I did with Fourth Wing. Fourth Wing was a love affair start to finish, whereas the Iron Flame it didn't hit the same, and that's okay. Not every book in the series is gonna hit the same. I still flew through it, but I think personally Fourth Wing is better. Then I finished the All Souls trilogy, the Book of Life. Well, there's a 4th one that I'm still reading, but the main series is the 3. Amazing, beautifully written, so good. Then I read A Court This Cruel and Lovely and A Kingdom This Cursed and Empty, which is Kingdom of Lies 1 and 2. So good. If you guys like morally gray, will kill for you main men, Lorien from this is just so good. Then I struggled my way through the Iron Queen number 3. Terrible. I'm sure actually the books are fine. I just can't get over my dislike of the main character, which is a big problem. So I don't like the main character. That's a me problem, but you know. Then I read King of Wrath and King of Pride, which are Kings of Sin 1 and Kings of Sin 2. Dante. So King of Wrath, the first book, is an arranged marriage trope, where like both parties are kind of reluctant, but then they fall in love and they make it work. It is great. Arranged marriages are not for everybody, but it's like an arranged marriage story with a happy ending, and I really enjoyed it. Then King of Pride is like opposites attract. What do they call that? So yeah, opposites attract and forbidden romance, forbidden love. This one was good. I think King of Wrath is better just because, well, okay, I personally like the vibe of Dante better than Kai, but I think that's just me and my taste in men more than anything else. But I prefer a more like willing to get the hands dirty, will like do what needs to be done, like is in control sort of guy. Kai is a little bit more like, you know, absolutely straight-laced sort of thing. So good. Then I read Game of Malice and Greed, which is the first book in this series. It was okay. It got good, but it took me like 70% to get into it, and that's like way too long to get into it. Then I read ACOTAR, the first one. I started to reread this. You guys know how I feel about ACOTAR. I'm not going to harp on too long about it, but like ACOTAR is definitely like the cornerstone of the romantasy genre right now, I feel like. It really like is like Sarah J Maas is kind of the, if you're just getting into romantasy, is definitely a good place to start. Then I read A Diary of a White Witch, which is the Beauchamp family point 5, which is, if you guys ever watched The Witches of East End or whatever, yeah, there was a TV show on the CW that was really good that got canceled. So this is like a thing. I didn't know that I hadn't read it, so I just read it quickly. Then I read Blood of a Fae 1, 2, and 3. So Queen of Roses, Court of Claws, and Empress of Fae. These were ARC reads, so NetGalley let me read them for free in exchange for a review by Briar Boleyn. These effectively are sort of retelling of Arthurian legend. So it's got like Merlin, Arthur, Morgan, all of these things in it. But it's a retelling with those characters. And effectively Morgan is supposed to be the queen, then gets passed over by her brother because her father sort of loses her mind. Her father is Uther Pendragon. And she goes through this whole like journey of finding out who she really is, where she belongs, all it's the same sort of thing. But this was really good, and the love interest in this, what is his name? Kairos. You could get it. Then I read A Court of Mist and Fury, which ACOTAR 2, very good, love it. Then A Crown This Cold and Heavy came out, which is Kingdom of Lies 3. Now, I was so obsessed with the first two of these books, but it took me so long to read this book for no reason other than that's when I started like really writing a lot. And so I could not, because what I ended up doing to myself was I was listening to ACOTAR and reading A Crown This Cold and Heavy, kind of like back and forth. And I was so obsessed with both of these books that I became so involved in these worlds that I couldn't really easily write my own world. And that became a problem. So yeah, then I took a little bit of a reading break, and I read King of Greed, which is King of Sins 3. This book gave me so much anxiety because, so it just hits, I think this one hits the most close to home for women in general, which is that Alessandra and Dominic get together when they're young. He becomes ultra successful, and she ends up losing herself in his life, and she ends up losing her sense of purpose, and she sort of starts to reclaim that, but in reclaiming it realizes how far they've grown apart, that even though he's created this life and she's surrounded by so much wealth and privilege and everything, that she is absolutely miserable, and the only thing she really wants is the time and attention of her husband, and he's too in his own world to notice it, so she leaves him. And I think this is like such a thing for so many people, where you don't want to lose yourself in your partner's life, but also like one of the things about having a partner who is very ambitious or very successful or very driven is you are worried always that their want of, I mean, not everybody, but I mean, commonly, like you don't want a partner who is so busy and so go that there's ultimately no time for you and your family. like somebody who works all the time is always in the office, right? So this one hit really close to home. So the trope in this one is steamy marriage and trouble / like second chance romance. And yeah, the whole book is effectively Dominic trying to win her back and making her happy. And it is a really happy ending because I think he does realize that his ultimate priority is her. But I think it is very stressful the first little bit because I think a lot of people have this concern that, you know, things are going to change and you're going to grow apart, or you'll lose yourself in your relationship, or you won't have your own identity, or your partner's going to be too busy and all this sort of stuff. And it's very close to home. So yeah, anyways, it was good, but it was very stressful for me because it's like, it is like chatter in my head that I have, right? So yeah, anyways. Then the next thing, okay, so the next 6 books are very spicy. So it's the Bonds That Tie series, so Broken Bonds, Savage Bonds, Blood Bonds, Forced Bonds, Tragic Bonds, and Unbroken Bonds. And so to preface, this is all reverse harem / like actual harem stuff. They're very spicy, but the story is actually very good. And it's so bad, but okay, if, like, I know that there's gonna be some people who are like, you do you, girl. Like, if it's against your beliefs, like, whatever. I'm just here for the good books. And these books are really highly rated. Every book in this series has over a 4-star review, I'm pretty sure. So, you know, there's 6 books with every book has over 4-star reviews. They're written, they're really easy to read, but every man in this book, like, it's what you want. There's no jealousy, there's no like games, there's no manipulation sort of thing. Like, what they're doing is, okay, so it's like there's a bunch of people who have powers, they're gifted, and they all live together separate from the rest of the world. And then there's this girl who is, what's her name? Okay, Ollie. Her name is Ollie, or Oleander, like a flower. So she is effectively hauled back into this community after living on the run for 5 years. And she's hauled back into her bonds, and their bonds are like the people who are your soulmates. And in this universe, you have multiple, like, there's a central, and then the central has like multiple soulmates, right? And they complete you and they do different things for you, whatever. So she gets hauled back and is thrown back into this universe. This is making me want to reread this series already. Goodness, I need to chill. And she has to learn how to live in the bounds again and all this sort of stuff. So, oh man, it's just so good. And she falls in love with each boy, and each boy falls in love with her, and we get to watch it, and it is so nice because each love story is different. They do different things for her, and yes, it's polyamory, it's not for everybody, but overall, I think it is really well written. And I think specifically North and Knox Draven are just like, oh, oh. Okay, anyways, then the final book that I read is Blood Queen. This has very controversial reviews on Goodreads. I got this as a part of ARC reading, and I ultimately ended up liking it, but I don't think it's amazing. But don't let the reviews deter you. I think ultimately what ended up happening here was, I think people really judged the book by its cover, and I did too, and then I kind of, yeah, so Layla is a queen who has a horrible reputation. She's called the Blood Queen. And effectively what she ends up doing is she goes out and she realizes that there's a plot afoot against her. And she has to go and solve it and do it. And I actually think it was okay. I think if you are ultra sensitive to like gore, sex work, all of that sort of stuff. Maybe it's not the vibe for you, but if you're, you know, okay with it, then it was pretty good. But yeah, that is everything. Those are all the 91 books that I have read thus far in 2023 with 10 days left. I hope you guys enjoyed this, and I will see you guys in the next one.